Sushruta for NEET is now available on the Google Play Store. Try it out for free.
Hearty welcome to biology class. Now, in continuation, what we have studied in the last class, we have looked into the structure of DNA. We have started looking into the base pair, and also we heard about Chargaff's rule. And what this Chargaff's rule says, as given in the NCERT book, uh, it was put forward by Erwin Chargaff. He has strongly proposed that the DNA is a double standard. The ratios between adenine and thymine and guanine cytosine are constant equals 1. Because adenine always pairs with the thymine, how many adenine are there? That much thymine should be there. How many guanine are there? That much cytosine should be there. So this is what Erwin Chargaff rule says. The base pairing confers a very unique property to the polynucleotide chain. What is this unique property here? They are said to be complementary to each other. The two polynucleotide chains which you see in the DNA are complementary to each other, and therefore, if the sequence of bases in one strand is known, then the sequence in the other strand can be predicted. I hope you know, if at all you know, the sequence of one strand is adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine, thymine, adenine, like that. What is the sequence of another strand? Come on, tell me. What is that? Quick.
Thymine,
Thymine,
adenine,
adenine, guanine,
guanine,
cytosine,
cytosine,
adenine, thymine.
Thymine. Okay, this is what exactly means. Okay, now also, if each strand from a DNA, let us call it as parental DNA, each strand from DNA acts as a template for synthesis of a new strand. The two double-stranded DNA, let us call them daughter DNA, thus produced would be identical to the parental DNA molecule. If each strand from a DNA acts as a template, look here, this is what the parental DNA you have. And parental DNA, you know, one strand of the parental DNA acts as a template for one daughter strand, and another strand of DNA acts as a template for another daughter strand. If you look into that, these two daughter strands, if you look into the nitrogen base of these two strands, they will be found to be identical to the parental DNA molecule. So now you know that if at all you see here, it is this daughter DNA molecule has a TCCA, and this one it is TCCA. So what you see is that these, I hope you understand this point. If each strand of DNA acts as a template for synthesis of new strand, that is now strand, the two double-strand DNA thus produced would be identical to the parental DNA molecule. Am I right? So, because of this, genetic implications of the structure of DNA became very clear. I hope you understand my point. So, this is a new daughter strand. This is a new daughter strand. If you look into the nitrogen bases of a new daughter strand, they will be identical to that of the parental DNA molecule. I hope it is clear. If it is not clear, you have to ask me what doubt you have, right? So, the salient features of double helix structure of DNA are as follows. Sarottam, is it clear? Sarottam? Yes? Clear. Namrata?
Yes, sir.
Rakesh? Yakesh? Okay. So, the
Yes.
salient features of the double helix structure of DNA are as follows. It is made up of two polynucleotide chains where the backbone is constituted of sugar phosphate and the bases project inside. You know, these bases which project inside acts like a steps or what you say rungs. The two chains have anti-parallel polarity. It means if one chain has a polarity 5 prime to 3 prime, the other has a 3 prime to 5 prime. I shall show you. I shall show you. The bases in two strands are paired through hydrogen bond. It's very important. Always ask a question, which type of a bond exists between base pair? Answer is a hydrogen bond. Let us see that. You can see here, one strand runs from 5' to 3', and another strand runs from the 5' to 3'. Another strand is from 3' to 5'. Okay, and these phosphate and sugar, they act as the support of this DNA molecule, side support, and these bases project from them and forms rungs or steps. Rungs or steps. And what I said, the bonding that appears between the nitrogen bases are hydrogen bonding. And you also know that these hydrogen bonding, there are two bonds between that of the adenine and thymine, and 3 bonds between guanine and cytosine. 3 bonds, and it is a double bond here, right? So adenine forms 2 hydrogen bonds, very important point, with the thymine from opposite strand and vice versa. Similarly, guanine is bonded with the cytosine with the 3 hydrogen bond. Always ask a question. So you can see 2 bonds, hydrogen bonds, and you can see 3 hydrogen bonds. Where it is a 2 between adenine and thymine. Where it is a 3 between cytosine and guanine, or vice versa. As a result, always a purine comes opposite to a pyrimidine. You know, which are the purines? Which are the purines? Adenine, guanine. So adenine always pairs with thymine. You know, adenine is a purine, thymine is pyrimidine. So as a result, always a purine comes opposite to a pyrimidine. This generates approximately uniform distance between the 2 strands of the helix. 2 strands of the helix. Because, you know, this adenine and thymine. In this, which is a single ringed and which is a double ringed? Which is a single ringed and which is a double ringed? Anyone?
Sir, adenine is double ringed.
Adenine and?
Guanine is double ringed.
Double ringed. Who said it?
Deepti.
Deepti,
sir.
Sorry, Deepti. Double ringed. And guanine, cytosine? Is it purines are double ringed or pyrimidines are double ringed? You have studied this, you know?
Sir,
You can see.
purines are double ringed.
What is this thymine?
It's a pyrimidine.
Pyrimidine. So purine, adenine, purine. Purine is double ringed. Guanine is double ringed. Adenine is, thymine is single ringed. Cytosine is single ringed. You know, thymine and cytosine are
Pyrimidine.
So pyrimidines are always single ringed and purines are double ringed. You must remember. So because of that, you see that the distance between the 2 strands always remains a constant, uniform. Because 2 ringed molecule, it bonds with the single ringed molecule. The 2 strands of DNA are connected to each other at the bases. The bases bond together using hydrogen bonds. Adenine and thymine has 2 hydrogen bonds. Guanine and cytosine have 3 hydrogen bonds. The 2 chains are coiled in a right-handed fashion. Very, very important. Always ask a question. The 2 chains are coiled in a right-handed fashion. The pitch of the helix is 3 nanometer. A nanometer is 1 billionth of a meter, and there are roughly 12 base pair in each turn. So you see that from this to here, it is called pitch. It is of 3.4 nanometer, and this consists of roughly 10 base pairs. Another important point. Another important point. So there are 10 base pairs in each turn. Consequently, the distance between a base pair in a helix will be 0.34 nanometer.
So
So
they are
this-
measured in the angstrom unit, yes, sir.
Pardon?
They are measured in the angstrom unit, the distance between the base pair.
That is also true. Nanometer also true. Yes, correct.
But in the previous chapter, the questions were given, no, sir. In that, the map unit was the right unit, right answer.
Pardon?
In the previous chapter, in the inheritance, sir.
No, now that you shall ask you during discussion class. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Now, let us look into this. This is what you have. So, if you come across now, this is, this, if at all take from here to here, this is the major groove, and now in between you come across the minor groove. So, you have one turn, full turn like that. So, this is the minor groove. So, from here to here, we have taken. So, in between the two major grooves, there is one minor groove. This is minor groove, where the bases are very close. And here you come across the distance is that appears far. So this is a 3 point, that is one turn, one full turn. Now it starts from here, it goes here and completes the turn. One turn, it includes 10 base pairs. The plane of one base pair stacks over the other in a double helix. That means it remains above another, over another. This, in addition to hydrogen bonds, confers stability of the helical structure. One base above another base. So these bases are connected to each other, and there is always a stability between the two of the chains. Compare the structure of purines and pyrimidines. Again, this is what I already told you. Can you find out why the distance between the two polynucleotide chains in DNA remains almost constant? The proposition of a double helix structure for DNA and its simplicity in explaining the genetic implication became revolutionary. So, why it is constant? Because a double ringed base, it always pairs with a single ringed base. Therefore, the distance between the two DNA chain remains always constant. Very soon, very important point, Francis Crick proposed central dogma. You must know what is central dogma. Sometimes it will be asked in examination. Frederick Crick proposed the central dogma in molecular biology, which states that genetic information flows from DNA to RNA to protein. So this is what central dogma. So you can see here, this is the central dogma representing a equation. So you know DNA is always known to replicate. This DNA, it forms mRNA. What is the transcription? mRNA, it goes to the cytoplasm and brings over to protein synthesis. It is known as a translation. This transcription translation together, it is known as a central dogma. So if it is asked what is central dogma, what is the central dogma? The central dogma is a process by which the instructions in DNA are converted into a functional product. Instruction in DNA are converted to functional product. It was first proposed by Francis Crick, discoverer of the structure of DNA. The central dogma of molecular biology explains the flow of genetic information from DNA to RNA to make a functional product. What is that? Protein. The central dogma suggests that DNA contains the information needed to make all of our proteins. DNA contains information needed to make all of our proteins. We shall see how later we are going to study in detail. And that RNA is a messenger that carries this information from DNA to the ribosome. The ribosome serves as factories of protein synthesis in a cell where the information is translated from a code into a functional product. Functional product is a protein. The process by which the DNA instructions are converted to functional product is called gene expression. Many times, if at all you ask what is gene expression is that, or in the last genetics we have studied about the genes, how the genes function. Genes function by directing the production of a relevant protein. Whenever the protein is produced, we say that gene gets expressed. Gene expression has two key stages: transcription and translation. In transcription, the information in the DNA of every cell is converted into a small portable RNA message. During translation, these messages travel from where the DNA, as in the cell nucleus, DNA is in the cell nucleus to the ribosome, where they are read to make the specific protein. We are going to study that. Under protein synthesis, we are going to study in detail. The central dogma states that the pattern of information that occurs more frequently in our cell is from existing DNA to make a DNA. That is what's called DNA replication. From DNA to make new RNA, it is a transcription. From RNA to make a new protein, translation. Okay, so this is what meant by central dogma. Okay, right? Do you have any doubt? Blessy, Charan, Chinmayi, Jyoti, Rafa, Siddesh, Harshvardhan, Janani, Kavi, Vishwas, Namrata, Navya, Prithviraj, Rakesh, Sarottam. Anyone has any doubt?
No, sir.
No?
No, sir.
Okay, shall I go ahead? Understood? Right. So now we are looking into the next part. This is what I already told you. This is central dogma. This shows the DNA replication. This is a transcription, formation of mRNA, and this translation where all these amino acids are put together under the direction of the codon contained in the mRNA, and relevant protein is synthesized. In some viruses, the flow of information in a reverse direction, that is from RNA to DNA. This is another important point. In some viruses, so it is not that RNA is formed from DNA, DNA is formed from RNA. Can you suggest a simple name to this process? Yes, it is called reverse transcription. Reverse transcription. So, reverse transcription is the transfer of information from RNA to make new DNA. RNA to make new DNA, not DNA to make RNA. Reverse transcription is the transfer of information from RNA to make DNA. This occurs in the case of retroviruses such as HIV. It is a process by which genetic information from RNA is assembled to new DNA. It is not that RNA is formed from DNA, DNA is formed from RNA. That is due to reverse transcriptase enzyme. Now let us look into packaging of DNA helix. Taken a distance, very important, taken a distance between two consecutive base pairs as a 0.34 nm, that is 0.34 into 10 to the power of minus 9. If the length of DNA double helix in a typical mammalian cell is calculated simply by multiplying the total number of base pairs with the distance between the two consecutive base pairs, that is 6.6 into 10 to the power of 9 base pair into 0.34 into 10 to the power of minus 9 m base pair, it comes to approximately 2.2 meters. So please know about this, remember this, how it is calculated. You can, you being the mathematics student, you can do it very easily, you can know that. So what you have to know, taken the distance between two consecutive base pairs as 0.34 nm, it comes out approximately the length of the DNA to be 2.2 meters. Remember, this very important point. A length that is far greater than the dimension of a typical nucleus. So if you look into the typical nucleus, this is the typical nucleus diameter. So how that this much of a big, long DNA can be accommodated inside the nucleus? How it can be? How such a long polymer packaged in a cell? Let us see that. If the length of E. coli DNA is 1.36 mm, can you calculate the number of base pairs in E. coli? You please to do it like that what you have here, information. So you can reverse it. Here they have given the base pair and they have asked, they have come to the conclusion how much is the length of the DNA. Here the length of the DNA is mentioned, and now you have to calculate how many number of base pairs are there E. coli. Please to do that yourself. Now, in prokaryotes such as E. coli, though they do not have a defined nucleus, this is one of the most important feature. In prokaryotes, you do not come across well-defined nucleus with a nuclear membrane at all. So the DNA is not scattered throughout the cell. In prokaryotes like E. coli, though they do not have a defined nucleus, the DNA is not scattered throughout the cell. You can see here, this is DNA. DNA is held with some protein in a region termed nucleoid. So whatever you have here in the prokaryotes, it is called nucleoid. It is also called genopore. This term is not there. Please note down. So in prokaryotes, you will come across a mass of DNA, a negatively charged mass. And this is referred to as a nucleoid, also called genopore. The DNA is in DNA in a nucleoid is organized in the large loops held by protein. This is what we have. Okay, it is called a nucleoid. Now let us see a little bit more about this. In the eukaryotes, this organization is much more complex. Very important, very, very important. You must know the principle this. So, concept. There is a set of positively charged basic proteins called histone. Always ask a question. Remember, histones are positively charged one. There is a set of positively charged basic proteins called histones. A protein acquires a charge depending upon the abundance of amino acid residues. That means amino acids. Amino acid residues refer to amino acids with the charged side chain. Histones are rich in the basic amino acid residues, lysine and arginine. This is again another important point you have to remember. What type of proteins are present? It is histones. Which histones are present associated with the DNA? The answer is the basic amino acids, that is lysines and arginine. And here, more than that, both the amino acid residues, that is, you must know that, what are they, Rakesh? What are the amino acids?
Basic or positive.
Which one? Example.
Arginine and then the
It is lysine and arginine. So these both the amino acid residues carry positive charges in their side chain. Positive charge. Amino acids. So DNA is
negatively charged.
negative charge. Histones are organized to form a unit of 8 molecules called histone octamer. 8 molecules. So you see here histone octamer. How many are there? It is shown 1. Am I right? It is shown 1. But what they say? Histone octamer means. What is that octamer means? 8 molecules. 8 molecules called histone octamer. The negatively charged DNA is wrapped around the positively charged histone octamer to form a structure called nucleosome. Remember, here it is only one histone shown. Even though it is histone octamer, there should be how many? Totally, there should be 8 molecules are there. There should be 8 molecules. But here, only 1 molecule is shown, and this 1 molecule of this histone octamer is wrapped by negatively charged DNA. This one is histone is actually positively charged. Okay, now these two together, that is 8 molecules of histone octamer plus the negative charged DNA, together they are known as a nucleosome. This is generally asked for 2 marks diagram in the examination. You may be asked to write the diagram of a nucleosome. Let me just show you the details of this. A typical nucleosome contains 200 base pair of DNA helix. So what you see here, all beaded appearance. What you see that all bead like that, beads like that. These represent a nucleosome. A typical nucleosome contains 200 base pairs of DNA helix. Nucleosomes constitute a repeating unit of a structure in the nucleus called chromatin. Remember, nucleosome represent a chromatin. Thread-like stained bodies are seen in the nucleus. Stained bodies, colored bodies. The nucleosomes in chromatin are seen as beads on a string. This is what you see, the beads on string. If you don't want, you can have this diagram. You may be having that. So beads on string, this is what you have. Beads on string structure when viewed under electron microscope. Understood? Clear? Navya? Rafa? Kanisa?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Okay. Now let us see the next structure. So a histone octamer is the 8 protein complex found at the center of nucleosome core particle. It consists of 2 copies of each of the 4 core histone proteins. So H2A, H2B, H3, H4. In this way, you come across the histone. Totally, how many are there histone? Octamer. Octamer refers to 8. Okay. The octamer assembles when a tetramer contain 2 copies of both H3H4 complex with the 2 H2A and H2B dimers. So you need not bother about much about that. I show you the diagram. Look here. Can you make it out? So you have octamer, histone octamers. In your NCT diagram, only one of that molecule is shown. Actually, you would come across these 8. So you can make out here clearly. So as I have told you here, you have 2 copies of both H3 and H4, and with the H2A and H2B. Both these, all these are H2A, H2B, H3, H4. These 2 copies together make 8. So please note down what all these octamers are called. Individual molecules are called H2A, H2B. H2A 2, H2B 2, H3 2, H4 2. Understood? Rafa, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if anyone wants, you can have the screenshot of this. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right. In fact, in this particular diagram, you are shown only one of the molecule. Like that, you have 8 molecules around which the DNA is wrapped. You can see that the DNA molecule is wrapped around these 8 molecules of the histone. The beads and string structure in chromatin is packaged to form chromatin fiber. Whatever the beads that you find, that are found on the chromatin fiber, that are further coiled and condensed at metaphysical stage of a cell region to form chromosome. So you have the thread-like structure. What you call these? What you call these? What you call these beads? What are these? Hello, anyone? What are these?
Nucleosomes.
Nucleosome, exactly, nucleosome. Okay, these are all nucleosomes. The packaging of chromatin at higher levels requires additional set of proteins that collectively are referred to as non-histone chromosomal proteins, NHC. It is not that only histone and DNA they make to form the chromosome. In a chromosome, you come across the chromosome in early stages is referred to as a chromatin. When it is condensed, when it is distinct, we use the term chromosome. A chromosome is always with one chromatid, generally. Whenever it gets duplicated, at that time it comes across to have 2 chromatids. The packaging chromatin at a higher level requires the additional set of protein, and these proteins are called non-histone chromosomal proteins. So you must remember, DNA is made up of a histone and that of the histone proteins, and the DNA molecule with histone protein wrapped around that histone protein, you have DNA molecule. These 2 together form nucleosome. Nucleosomes are beaded like appearance in a chromatin, and these chromatin condense to form the chromosome with the help of that additional set of proteins. In a typical nucleus, some region of chromatin are loosely packed and are referred to as euchromatin. Remember, you must know the difference between chromatin. In that chromatin, euchromatin and heterochromatin. In a typical nucleus, some region of the chromatin are loosely packed and they stain light and are referred to as euchromatin. And the chromatin that is more densely packed and stains dark are called heterochromatin. You will be asked sometimes, what is the difference between euchromatin and heterochromatin? Please note down, euchromatin is said to be transcriptionally active chromatin, whereas heterochromatin is inactive. What is euchromatin? Euchromatin is a loosely packed, heterochromatin is a densely packed. Euchromatin is a lightly stained, heterochromatin is a darkly stained. Euchromatin is active, heterochromatin is inactive. Now let us see that. You can have this screenshot. You see here. This is what a chromosome with the 2 chromatids. Okay. This area is heterochromatin. Is it loosely packed or densely packed? It is more condensed, okay, and this stain darker. And you can also have these 2 features. It is a silenced gene, methylated. Let us see what it later. It is a gene poor. Gene poor means it is high with the adenine and thymine content. And this is what euchromatin. Euchromatin is less condensed. It is a gene expressing, that means active. It is inactive. Gene poor means inactive. It is active. And gene rich, higher GC content and stains lighter. It is very, very important informative. The picture, you can have the screenshot of this. Understood? Is it clear? Clear? Right? Shall I go ahead? Shall I go ahead, Harshvardhan? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Shall I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is same thing. Two types of chromatin, euchromatin, heterochromatin. Euchromatin, less condensed. Okay. At the chromosome arms, contains unique sequences, gene-rich, replicated throughout S phase, and recombination during meiosis. Euchromatin, it is active. Heterochromatin, highly condensed at the centromeres and telomeres. Telomere, that means end, contains repetitive sequences, gene poor, replicated in the late S phase, no meiotic recombination. That means it is less active. Clear? Now let us go to the next part of our study, that is the search for genetic material. Yes, come on. Do you have any doubts? You can just go through that. You can look into that. Do you have any doubts?
No, sir.
Right? Just a minute. The search for genetic material. Now the thing is that, we have in the chromosome, the DNA, we also have the protein. Now the question is that, for a very long time it bothered very much the scientists, which is the genetic material and which is not the genetic material. So now we are looking to the search for genetic material. Even though the discovery of nuclein by Mister always ask a question, who has termed nuclein or used the term nuclein? And you must know that it is a Mister. Even though the discovery of nuclein by Mister and the proposition of principles of inheritance by Mendel were almost at the same time. Both this discovery of this nuclein and that principles of inheritance by Mendel, these were both took place at the same time. But that the DNA acts as a genetic material took a long time to be discovered and proven. By 1926, the quest to determine the mechanism for genetic inheritance had reached the molecular level. The efforts. Previous discoveries by Gregor Mendel, Walter Sutton, Thomas and Morgan, and numerous other scientists had narrowed the search to the chromosome located in the nucleus of most cells. So, because of this different work carried by different scientists, they have come to the conclusion that chromosomes are the vehicles for the genes. So, they could see the nucleus, they could see the chromosome. But what is the genetic material? Actually, this has taken a long time to be proved. But the question of what molecule is actually genetic material had not been answered at all for a very long time. Now, let us look into what is called a transforming principle. In this molecular basis of inheritance chapter, you must know, you must become thorough who carried out which experiment and for what purpose. These are the three important things. Who carried out the experiments, which experiments they have carried out, for what purpose they have carried out, and what is the inference. This is very, very important. You must make one table and always remember. In 1928, Frederick Griffith In a series of experiments with the Streptococcus pneumoniae, you know, it is a bacteria responsible for pneumonia. Streptococcus pneumoniae witnessed a miraculous transformation in the bacteria. And this transforming principle, this will be asked for 4 marks or 5 marks question in board exam. So, right. With the explain Griffith's experiment with regard to transforming principle, or explain Griffith's experiment on Streptococcus pneumoniae. During the course of his experiment of Griffith, a living organism had changed in the physical form. What is that? When Streptococcus pneumoniae, it is a pneumococcus, bacteria are grown in a culture plate. Some produce smooth, shiny colonies, what you say, yes type, yes variety, while others produce rough colonies, we abbreviate as R. So what is happening? When Streptococcus pneumoniae, they were cultured, these are bacteria, when they were cultured, they produce 2 types of colonies. One is shining colonies, what you call a smooth variety, and another one is that of the rough colonies, right? This is because the S strain bacteria have a mucus coat, which is a shining polysaccharide coat, while R strain does not have. So this is what is smooth with the polysaccharide coat, and this was a shiny, and this was a rough. This was rough. So remember, there are 2 strains. One is a S strain and then is a R strain. Now let us see what is the difference between these 2 strains, right? So mice, this is what mice here. Mice infected with the S strain is always considered as virulent, because whenever mice gets infected with S strain, the mice used to die. So mice infected with the S strain die. This is S strain. When the mice were given the dose injection of this containing this smooth strain, the mice used to die. So mice infected with S strain, virulent one, die from pneumonia infection. But the mice infected with the R strain, this is what your R strain. It is non-virulent. It is not used to cause any death. So the mice infected with the R strain do not develop pneumonia. They used to survive. I hope you understand this point. There are 2 strains. One is a rough strain and a smooth strain. Hello, any doubt?
Excuse me, sir. Yes, Aisha is waiting, sir.
Okay. Yes.
She's asking you to let her in.
Okay. Thank you for telling. She telephoned you?
No, she texted me.
Okay, right. So now, good. Thank you. If at all anyone is there, you could make a leader. Who is this Kavi Panjagali? Who is Kavi?
Kavita, sir.
Kavita. Okay. I get you name yourself Kavita. Okay, right. And Chinmayi, you please to contact me later. You contact me later. Chinmay. Okay. So this is what you have. This is what you have. Okay. Right. Now I hope it is understood. It is clear to you know what I have said. Right? So you have 2 strain. Rough strain is non-virulent. It is not dangerous. Smooth strain is virulent. It is dangerous in the sense when the smooth strain was injected into the body, mouse used to die. When the rough strain was injected into the body, mouse never used to die. So it is non-virulent, it is not dangerous. So mice infected with the S strain die from pneumonia infection, but mice infected with the R strain do not develop pneumonia. But interesting enough, what happened? Griffith was able to kill bacteria by heating them. So what he did, he treated with heat. He was able to kill bacteria by heating them. Which bacteria he has heated? He observed that the heat killed S strain. This is a smooth strain. The smooth strain. Heat killed S strain. He observed that heat killed S strain bacteria. Injected mice did not kill them. That means they lost the power of virulency. So whenever the smooth strain was directly injected into the mouse, it is to die. When this smooth strain was heat killed, if it is injected into the body of the mouse, it never used to die, it used to survive. He observed that heat killed S strain bacteria injected in mice did not kill them. But when injected a mixture of heat killed S and live R, heat killed S strain plus live R bacteria, the mice died. What he did? Rough strain plus heat killed smooth strain. When he injected that mouse dies. Moreover, he recovered living S bacteria from the dead mice. So mouse died, but from the body of the mouse, he could recover living S bacteria. Because he has already killed this S bacteria by heat. But now, when he mixed that heat killed S bacteria and this live rough strain, when he mixed that and injected the mouse died. So after that autopsy, after postmortem, when a mouse was searched for this bacteria, he could get from that living S bacteria. Look here. This is what you have. This is what you have in your NCERT book. S strain, inject into mice die. Rough strain, inject into mice live. S strain, heat killed, inject into mice live. And S strain, heat killed plus R strain living, inject into mice die. So now the question is that, what question arises? Now? He concluded that R strain bacteria had somehow been transformed by the heat killed S strain bacteria. R strain bacteria was non-virulent. Okay. And somehow been transformed by the heat killed S strain bacteria. Some transforming principle which transformed them into the non-virulent to virulent. Some transforming principle transferred from the heat killed S strain had enabled R strain to synthesize a smooth polysaccharide coat and become virulent. This must be due to the transfer of genetic material from a heat killed S strain to rough strain bacteria. However, biochemical nature of genetic material was not defined from his experiment. He could not make it out what exactly it is. But he said that some principle, some changed this rough strain into a virulent form. Non-virulent to virulent form, and rough strain got converted into the smooth polysaccharide coat and became virulent. And he could not make out the biochemical nature of this. Is it clear? Any doubt?
Sir, you can once explain what is difference between rough stain and smooth stain, sir?
No, the smooth stain has a polysaccharide coat. Rough stain does not have that polysaccharide coat, more for that structurally. And smooth stain is virulent. Virulent in the sense it used to kill the mouse whenever this mouse got the infected. Rough stain, smooth stain bacteria, if at all it infects a mouse, the mouse going to die. Mouse used to die. Rough stain, they never used to kill the mouse. Understood? Who asked this question?
Yes, sir. Sarvottam asked.
Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So, virulent means the one which used to kill the organism. Non-virulent means it is a non-dangerous. Virulent means it is dangerous. It is generally virulent variety of any of these bacteria. They generally cause the harm to the organism and they generally kill the organism. We say that is a virulent. Non-virulent are not dangerous because they never used to kill the organism. Okay, is it clear? Any doubt? Now, in the next experiment, biochemical characterization of transforming principle. What is this transforming principle? Here, that whatever experiment carried out by our person, who is that person that conducted this experiment?
Frederick Griffith.
Yeah, you must remember. So, Griffith was not succeeded in finding out the biochemical nature of a transforming principle. Remember, whenever such a work takes place, it takes hundreds of years sometimes to continue that particular year. It doesn't mean that for 100 years, the people kept quiet on that. No. Lot of people continue the work, but it takes generally a long time to prove what exactly this transforming principle is. So, biochemical characterization of transforming principle. That means finding out the biochemical nature of this transforming principle. Prior to the work of Oswald Avery, very important, Oswald Avery, Colin MacLeod, and Macallan McCarthy, generally we called Avery, MacLeod, and McCarthy, the genetic material was thought to be a protein. Because in the DNA, you come across DNA proper, you come across the DNA is just wrapped around the protein. So now the question is that whether DNA is a genetic material or the histone protein, whatever that you come across, along with that, it is a genetic material. These three scientists, Avery, MacLeod, and McCarthy, worked to determine the biochemical nature of a transforming principle in the Griffith's experiment. Whatever transforming principle Griffith called, as I told you, Griffith was not in a position to say what is this a transforming principle. He said the transforming principle. This is just like Mendel telling some factor. What is that factor? Mendel never knew. What is that factor? And it took hundreds of years to find out what is that factor. So in the same way, they purified biochemicals. What are the biochemicals? No, biochemicals are mainly proteins, DNA, and RNA. Whatever you have in the chromosome here mainly. They purified biochemicals from the heat-killed S cell. Heat-killed S cell. So they wanted to know heat-killed S cell, what it is possesses, and they wanted to find out the nature of the biochemical. They purified biochemicals, especially proteins, DNA, and RNA, from the heat-killed S cells to see which one could transform live R cells into S cell. In order to find out live R cell, non-virulent, into virulent S cell, which one transformed these live R cells into S cell, they wanted to find out. So for that, they wanted to know that, they wanted to find out whether it's a protein or DNA or RNA. They discovered that DNA alone from S bacteria caused R bacteria to become transformed. Very, very important sentence. So the gist of the experiment of Avery, MacLeod, and McCarthy is that it is the DNA that transformed S bacteria, that transformed that R bacteria to become virulent. That is, it is the DNA alone from S bacteria that caused R bacteria to become virulent. Okay. Now, they also discovered that protein digesting enzymes, proteases, and RNA digesting enzymes, RNases, did not affect transformation. They also discovered that protein digesting enzymes and RNA digesting enzymes did not affect the transformation. So the transforming substance was not a protein or RNA. Okay. Now, how this could be done? Now, they wanted to find out whether it's a protein is the transforming principle, or is it DNA, or is it RNA. Now, what they did, let us see that. So, to this, which contained protein, which contained DNA, which contained RNA, they treated this with the proteases. When the proteases enzyme proteases report, all the proteins that were present in the transforming principle got digested. Then they tried to find out whether this transformation is brought in or not. And next time, they just treated with the RNAs, that is RNA digesting enzyme. So all RNAs are removed. Then they wanted to find out whether the transformation is brought in or not. Now they treated with both the proteases and RNAs. That means in this S-killed, whatever the biochemicals they got separated from the S-killed bacteria, and they treated these biochemicals with both RNAs and proteases. So whatever proteins and RNAs were there, they got all dissolved, and only DNA was left there. And this they tried whether this will act as a transforming principle. Yes, it brought about the transformation of the R bacteria, the non-virulent R bacteria, to be virulent. Digestion with the DNAs did inhibit transformation. suggesting that DNA causes the transformation. Have you understood my point now? Have you understood? Blessy? Charan?
Yes, sir.
Charan? Chinmayi?
Sir.
Please, let me know whether you understood. Shall I go ahead? If it will say that. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Shall I go ahead? Fatima, Rafa, Diti, Siddesh, Harshvardhan, Janani,
Yes, sir.
everyone is clear? So
Yes, sir.
it is not protein is a transforming agent. It is not RNA is a transforming agent. It is a DNA that transformed rough strain, which was non-virulent, into virulent strain. Understood? Prathviraj, Navya, Sarota,
Yes, sir.
Namrata, Kavita, shall I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
sir.
right. Yeah, I shall go ahead with that. So now, you please remain here after the lecture gets over, and I have to mark your attendance. So don't leave in between. Okay, right. Now let us continue here. They concluded that the DNA is the hereditary material, but not all biologists were convinced. So they said that it is the DNA that is responsible. DNA, it caused non-virulent to virulent one. So these are three scientists. Who are these three scientists? Avery, MacLeod, and McCarthy.
McCarthy.
So these they concluded that DNA is the hereditary material. Can you think of any difference between DNAs and DNAs? DNAs, deoxyribonucleic acids. DNAs is the enzyme. DNA, yes, is deoxyribonucleic acids. DNAs is enzyme, right? Now let us look into genetic material is DNA. The unequivocal proof that DNA is the genetic material came from the experiment of Alfred Hershey and Martha Chase. It's a Hershey and Chase. Again, another experiment. What is this experiment? This experiment proves that DNA is the genetic material. So you have seen first experiment of Griffith transforming principle. Second experiment of that the Avery, MacLeod, McCarthy with regard to what is the transforming principle. They said it is the DNA. But now the DNA as a genetic material is proved by this experiment carried out by Hershey and Martha Chase. They worked with viruses that infect bacteria. Always, viruses that infect bacteria are called bacteriophage. Always ask a question in the board examination for 1 mark. What is bacteriophage? A bacteriophage is virus that infect bacteria. The bacteriophage attaches to the bacteria and its genetic material then enters the bacterial cell. The bacterial cell treats the viral genetic material as if it was its own and subsequently manufactures more virus particles. So this is most important point. Viruses they don't have their own identity. They can't do anything. Viruses, if at all they have to propagate, they should enter another living system. So whenever these viruses enter into the bacteria will not be knowing that whether it is its virus or virus's DNA. The moment virus enters into the bacteria, the DNA becomes the part and parcel of the DNA of bacteria. So bacterial cell treats viral genetic material as if it was its own and subsequently manufactures more virus particles. Hershey and Chase worked to discover whether it was a protein or DNA from viruses that entered the bacteria. So they wanted to prove out that DNA is the genetic material. So they wanted to prove that it is not the protein that is the genetic material. So whenever scientists do some work, there will be always some other scientist to contradict the work of one scientist. That is the fashion of this discovery or research. They grew some viruses. Whom you must remember this work of Hershey and Martha Chase, Alfred Hershey and Martha Chase. So they grew some viruses on a medium that contained radioactive phosphorus, and some other viruses on medium that contained radioactive sulfur. So they made two culture. in one culture, some viruses were grown in a medium containing radioactive phosphorus, and in another culture, then in another medium, they are cultured in a medium containing radioactive sulfur. You know, viruses grown. You know what will be incorporated? This radioactive phosphorus will be incorporated in which particular type of molecule? Tell me. Radioactive phosphorus will go into DNA or protein?
DNA.
DNA. Radioactive sulfur will go into
Protein.
radioactive sulfur will go into ಹಲೋ ಹೇಳಿ ಓಕೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ನೋಡ್ತೇನೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ಬಿಡಿ ಓಕೆ ಸೊ ರೇಡಿಯೋ ಸಲ್ಫರ್ ವಿಲ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು protein. So viruses grown in the presence of radioactive phosphorus. Viruses grown in the medium containing radioactive phosphorus contain radioactive DNA, but not radioactive protein. Why? Contain radioactive DNA, but not radioactive protein. Why? Viruses grown in the presence of radioactive phosphorus contain radioactive DNA, but not radioactive protein, because DNA contains phosphorus, but protein does not. Understood? Protein. This is a protein molecule. What it contains? Can you see anywhere phosphorus here? Can you see anywhere phosphorus in this? Can you see anywhere
No,
phosphorus?
sir.
No, but you can see sulfur.
In DNA.
Sulfur. So protein has sulfur, and DNA has phosphorus. So radioactive. So viruses go in the presence of radioactive phosphorus contain the radioactive DNA, but not radioactive protein, because the DNA contains phosphorus, but protein does not. Similarly, viruses grown on the radioactive sulfur contain the radioactive protein, but not the radioactive DNA, because the DNA does not contain sulfur. I hope these points are clear. Now, radioactive phages, that is the viruses grown in the bacteria, radioactive phages were allowed to attach to E. coli bacteria. Now they are made to attach to E. coli bacteria. That means these enter into the body of E. coli. Then, as the infection proceeded, the viral cores were removed from the bacteria by agitating them in a mixer. So they were removed. The virus's particles were separated from bacteria by spinning them in a centrifuge. Bacteria which was infected with viruses that had radioactive DNA were radioactive. Bacteria which was infected with viruses that had radioactive DNA were radioactive, indicating that DNA was the material that passed from the virus to the bacteria. They wanted to find out which is the genetic material which passes from virus to bacteria, whether DNA passes or the protein passes. If the protein passes from virus to bacteria, then protein would have been the genetic material. If the DNA passes from viruses to bacteria, then DNA is the genetic material. Let us see this experiment. Look here. Now, bacteria that are infected with viruses that had radioactive proteins were not radioactive. Are you understanding this point? Are you understanding or no? This indicates that proteins did not enter the bacteria from the virus. Now let us see that experiment here. Okay, look here. Now, what is this? You see this experiment? Hershey-Chase experiment? Now, this is a bacteriophage. What this bacteriophage has? Radioactive
Phosphorus.
This is
Sulfur.
phosphorus.
Sulfur.
Radioactive sulfur. What is that radioactive sulfur called? What is it called? What is this? Radioactive? Can you read the number?
35.
35. This is
32.
radioactive 32 phosphor. This is a 35 sulfur. Sulfur 35. This is a phosphor 32. So now, what happened? That is bacteriophage with the radioactive sulfur is the bacteriophage with the radioactive phosphor. Now, it is infected now. Okay, first stage, got infected. What is this? Hello?
DNA.
Oh,
No.
What is this?
E. coli bacteria.
E. coli. This is E. coli bacteria. And it got infected by this bacteriophage. It got infected. Now, you could see the blending. Now, you can see that both, whatever this DNA is there, whatever that you seen here, it entered here. Okay? It entered into that. Okay? Entered into that. Right? Now, no radioactive detected in the cell. If you see here, now radioactive whether it is there, no. But radioactive was found in the supernatant. When they did this centrifugation, they could see that radioactive, that sulfur, it was found in the supernatant and it was not incorporated into the DNA. But here, after that mixing, after that centrifugation, they see radioactive detected in the cell, and supernatant did not contain radioactive phosphorus. Radioactive phosphorus was not present in the supernatant, but it was found in the DNA. It got incorporated in DNA, but in the sulfur-treated viruses, radioactive sulfur was found in the supernatant, but not found in the DNA or inside the cell. So by this experiment, the same experiment I am showing you, that by this, what they have concluded? They concluded that the DNA is the genetic material. From the foregoing discussion, it is clear that the debate between protein versus DNA as the genetic material was unequally resolved from Hershey-Chase experiment. It became an established fact that DNA that acts as the genetic material and not this protein. Have you understood this? Kavita, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Any doubt you have? Jyoti?
No, sir, I understand.
Prithviraj?
No, sir.
Sarvottam? Chinmayi?
No doubt, sir.
Okay, so, however, it subsequently became clear that in some viruses,
No, sir, I am understood this.
in some viruses, RNA is the genetic material. RNA is the genetic material. For example, tobacco mosaic viruses, Q beta bacteriophage, beta bacteriophage, etc. It is a RNA is the genetic material. You must know which is the genetic material where. That is very important. So in tobacco mosaic viruses, it is RNA genetic material. So it is not that always DNA is genetic material everywhere, but most of the time DNA is the genetic material. It acts as the genetic material in most of the organism. Answer to some of the questions such as why DNA is the predominant genetic material, whereas RNA performs the dynamic functions of messenger and adapter, has to be found from differences between chemical structure of two nucleic acid molecules. Always ask a question for 4 marks. Whatever experiments I have told you now, there are first I said about the Griffith's experiment on transforming principle. Second, Avery, Macaulay, and McCarthy's experiment with regard to proving what is the transforming principle, DNA or the protein, that experiment. And third experiment, Hershey-Chase experiment to prove that the DNA is genetic material. All these experiments are asked for 4 to 5 marks in the board examination. You must know, you must write and you must know, and answering 4 to 5 marks questions very important to get out mark in the biology. 1 mark, 2 marks you will get easily. 1 mark question, 2 marks. But getting out marks in that big question is a little bit difficult, for which you have to practice. Now, how we can decide why DNA is the genetic material and why not the RNA? Let us say a molecule that can act as genetic material must have following features. What are that? If at all any material, any molecule which has to act as genetic material should fulfill following criteria. 1, it should be able to generate its replica. It should be able to generate its replica. Now, you tell me, Aisha, you tell me whether DNA and RNA both are able to replicate, both are able to produce their replica or no? Aisha, whether both of them are able to produce their replica? DNA and RNA? Aisha not there? Kanisa? Hello, Navya? Hello, are you
Yes,
there?
sir.
Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Aisha is there? Aisha? Navya?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you tell me whether DNA and RNA both are able to replicate or no?
No, sir. Only DNA replicates.
No, RNA can also replicate. I shall tell you. Okay, I will explain that later. So, both is DNA and RNA, it should be able to generate its replica. Replica, that is replication. It should chemically and structurally be stable. 3. It should provide the scope for slow changes that are required for evolution. Slow changes, not fast changes. 4. It should be able to express itself in the form of a Mendelian character. So remember, I explain this again. For any molecule to act as genetic material, it should have the following 4 criteria. It should be able to generate its replica. It should be chemically and structurally stable. It should provide the scope for slow changes, not fast changes. They are required for evolution. It should be able to express itself in the form of a Mendelian character, that is passing from one generation to another generation through the chromosome. Now let us see whether both this DNA and RNA have this capacity. Now, if one examines each experiment one by one, because of rule of base pairing complementarity, both nucleic acids, DNA and RNA have the ability to direct their duplication. Okay. You know, whenever this double-stranded DNA, it unwinds. If at all double-stranded DNA unwinds. Now you know that different nitrogen bases, they can come and sit here and form one new DNA molecule. Like that, complement bases, they come here and they can replicate. So new DNA molecule gets formed. Even if at all there is one RNA strand, let us think that there is one RNA strand with the nitrogen bases here. Is it not possible that another all free nitrogen bases, they come and attach here and form one more RNA strand? Is it not possible in the cell? Because cell cytoplasm has a lot of nitrogen bases. So these nitrogen bases, they come and pair and form another RNA. So therefore, remember, both the nucleic acids, DNA and RNA have the ability to direct their duplication. Understood? Clear? The other molecules in a living system, such as proteins, fail to fulfill first criteria itself. Proteins cannot duplicate. No, proteins cannot duplicate, cannot double. So proteins they don't have, but both DNA and RNA have the ability to duplicate themselves or to direct their duplication. I hope it is understood. Understood? Blessy? Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the genetic material should be stable. Genetic material stable enough not to change with the different stages of life cycle, age, or with the change in the physiology of the organism. The genetic material should be stable. Even if at all you heat them, they should not get destroyed. The genetic material should be stable enough not to change with the different stages of life cycle, changing with the larval form, adult form, like that, changing, getting changed with the age, or with the change in physiology of the organism. So if you look into that, stability as one of the properties of genetic material was very evident in Griffith's experiment. What he did, he heat killed the S strain. Even if at all he has heat killed the S strain bacteria, when it was introduced into the R bacteria, this S bacteria, heat killed strain S bacteria DNA could transform rough bacteria into virulent. That means what it is proved? It proved that even if at all you heat the DNA material, will not get changed. Stability as one of the properties of genetic material was very evident in Griffith's transferring principle itself, that heat which killed the bacteria, which killed the S strain bacteria, at least did not destroy some of the properties of genetic material. Have you understood this point? Have you understood? You have to reply. Please, you have to reply.
Yes, sir.
In
Yes,
Griffith's
sir.
experiment, in Griffith's experiment, he heated that S strain bacteria. even though he has heated S strain bacteria and then injected along with the R strain bacteria to the mice, you know, the mouse, it got transformed. So remember, therefore, even if at all it is heated, bacteria got killed, the genetic material did not get affected much. This now can easily be explained in the light of DNA that two strands are being complementary if separated by heating come together when appropriate conditions are provided. That means if the two strands of DNA, we are going to study that again later, if the two strands of DNA get separated from each other due to heat, if at all you provide appropriate condition, they come together. Now they got separated because of the heat, and now if you treat further, again they come together and form the duplicate strand. They come together. I hope you understand my point. Two strands being complementary, if separated by heating, if they come together, then when the sufficient provided conditions are favorable conditions are provided, they come together. Understood? So this is what they go to DNA. Now, further, 2' OH group present at every nucleotide in RNA. You know, in RNA you have 2' OH part. It is a reactive group. It is a reactive group and makes RNA labile and easily degradable. So 2' OH in the sugar, in the ribose sugar. Okay, this 2' OH group present at every nucleotide in RNA is a reactive group. It is not stable. It is a reactive group and makes RNA labile, liable to change and easily degradable. So DNA is therefore it is strong when compared to RNA. RNA is also now known to be catalytic. It acts as an enzyme, hence reactive. Therefore, DNA chemically is less reactive and structurally more stable when compared to RNA. Therefore, among the two nucleic acids, DNA is a better genetic material. Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Navya?
Yes.
Somebody? Sarvotam?
Yes,
Shall you
sir.
go ahead? Shall you go ahead? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Prithviraj, Namrata, in fact, the presence of thymine at the place of uracil, also confers additional stability to DNA. Presence of thymine in DNA is further confirms that DNA is more stable. Both DNA and RNA are able to mutate. In fact, RNA being unstable mutates at a faster rate. RNA mutates at a faster rate. Please, this particular question, why DNA is genetic material, not RNA? If it is asked, you have to write all these points. In fact, RNA being unstable mutates at a faster rate. Consequently, viruses having RNA genome and having shorter lifespan mutate and evolve faster. Right? Now, RNA can directly code for the synthesis of protein, hence can easily express the characters. DNA, however, is dependent on RNA for synthesis of protein. The protein synthesis machinery has evolved around the RNA. Genetic material is around DNA, but the protein synthesis machinery has evolved around RNA. The above discussion indicates that both RNA and DNA can function as genetic material, but the DNA being more stable is preferred for storage of genetic information. For the transmission of genetic information, RNA is better. I hope you understand this clearly. Now let us look into RNA word. From foregoing discussion, an immediate question becomes evident. Which is the first genetic material? Always ask a question. Answer is RNA. RNA was the first genetic material. There is now enough evidence to suggest that essential life processes such as metabolism, translation, splicing, etc., evolved around RNA, which we are going to study in the detail in the coming classes. RNA used to act as a genetic material as well as the catalyst. Remember, in some of that, it acts as a bacteria, it acts as an enzyme. RNA used to act as a genetic material as a catalyst. There are some important biochemical reactions in living system that are catalyzed by RNA catalyst and not by protein enzyme. Ribozyme is an example. But RNA being a catalyst, catalyst always enhances the reaction rate. RNA being a catalyst was active and hence unstable. Therefore, DNA has evolved from RNA with the chemical modification that make it more stable. DNA has evolved from RNA at the beginning. Okay. DNA being double-stranded and having complementary strand further resists changes by evolving a process of repair. Right? DNA is a double-stranded and having a complementary strand further resists changes by evolving a process of repair. If something happens, they can repair easily. Now, let us go to replication. While proposing the double helical structure for our DNA, Watson and Crick had immediately proposed a scheme for replication of DNA. To quote their original statement, it has not escaped our notice that the specific pairing we have postulated immediately suggests a possible copying mechanism for the genetic material. That means when they put forwarded the double-stranded helix model of DNA, at that time only, Watson and Crick had in their mind that this replication is possible because of the complementarity of the two strands. The scheme suggested that two strands would separate and act as a template for the synthesis of a new complementary strands. Two strands would separate and act as a template, means model, for the synthesis of new complementary strands. After the completion of replication, each DNA molecule would have one parental and one newly synthesized strand. Whenever the two strands of DNA separate, one strand, it acts as a template and it makes the new strand to get formed. So after the completion of replication, each DNA molecule would have one parental strand and one newly synthesized strand. This scheme was termed semi-conservative DNA replication. Always ask a question, what is semi-conservative DNA replication? In a semi-conservative DNA replication, out of the two strands of DNA molecule, parental DNA molecule, one strand, it helps in the formation of another new strand. So in a newly formed DNA molecule, one will be the parental strand and another one will be the new strand. So this is what? This is a semi-conservative DNA molecule. These are the two strands of DNA molecule. At the time of new DNA molecule formation, the two strands, they get separated. After these two strands get separated, when the nitrogen bases become free, the nitrogen base, fresh nitrogen bases, they come and start attaching to the parental standard nitrogen bases and form one new daughter strand and another new daughter strand of the DNA molecule. This is what is known as a semi-conservative method of DNA replication, the experimental probe. So this experimental probe I should take up in my next class. Okay. So my next class is not tomorrow. It is on a Thursday.